Yes, yes, yes. It is the Cast Worthy podcast, and we are back. I am Big Steve, aka Last of a Dying Breed, on the X Machine, formerly known as Twitter, joined by EJ, the sophisticated, super single, savage, street sweeper,
You wild for that.
panty tweaker, uh,
Woo.
2 man. It's a 2 man right now. Pause till VP gets in here. Pause again. He's on his way. But first week of December, when the real Sagittarius has come out, we the real Sagittarius. December Sagittarius is the real Sagittarius. All you people, the boneless Sagittarius from November 22nd through the 31st or 30th, y'all boneless. We the real bone in. Pause Sagittarius over here. It's about time to get litty. That's what the
Yep.
kids saying these days.
Nah, they don't say that no more.
What are they saying? Fleek went
uh,
by fast.
there's so much craziness out here. It's ridiculous. It's so
All
much.
right.
These kids slang is ridiculous.
Well, we about to be on one. It's a sad season. And I don't even care how broke I am because of Joe Biden. I'm gonna still make the best of it.
Yo, Joe, I don't want to hear shit about politics until student loans are gone. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I really don't. We've given how much to Ukraine? How much do we give to Israel annually? Yo, just wipe away the loans, bro. Just let it go. You're not getting them. They're not getting them. I mean, the amount of money people are paying over that span of the life of their loans, it just doesn't make sense. And I mean, honestly, the generation that is in a lot of student loan debt had no idea what they were doing. Honestly, the United States government are some predators. All of that was predatory. You should never
Oh,
have been able to give people that much uh that much in loans, and then they don't care about your debt to income ratio. They don't care about nothing. They want their money. So it's like,
yo,
how you gonna get that?
the nasty part is like these motherfuckers are like, yo, this is how much we're gonna give you for your loans for your classes and your books. But here's this extra two, three, $5,000 if you just want to fuck around a little bit on spring break. If you want to go buy some nice shit for your dorm, here's an extra 5K.
It's
Like
predatory, and
it was
and
nasty.
they know they're not gonna get it back. They knew they were not gonna get it back from you. They knew that. Like, why are people that average salary 50K getting 200,000 worth of loans? Why?
Or not. You mean if they finish school, right? You talking about if they
Right,
finish school, the
right,
what their degree would make them?
right.
Listen, yo, if somebody got an associate's in like veterinarianism, some shit that ain't never gonna pay off, or even education, because they don't pay teachers shit, right? I mean, they've been doing some give backs and shit for student loans for them, but nonetheless, they don't want to pay teachers. They don't want to increase the budgets for them. So you want to hand them 150, 200,000 so they can go to a nice school to come out and make $47,000 a year. How they
And
gonna pay
and
you?
and not to mention, they don't factor in your living. They don't care about none of that shit. So they basically saying, we don't care that the taxes in city went up. We don't care that this house situation happened to you. All these things, we don't care. It's like it's the biggest crock of shit. And this president, our president that we voted for, I voted for, you voted for, VP voted for, stood on business talking about we gonna get rid of these student loans. Well, you know who's impacted most by student loans? Guess who? The black community, black
Mhm.
students, people who had no idea what they were doing. Because generationally, we're behind in education because, hey, we weren't allowed to read for how many years, right? And we go into these situations thinking we're going to better ourselves. And we take out these loans and we get the jobs and we do the model citizenship and we show up at the polls. And you told us that if we don't vote for you, we're not black. Well, what are you doing for us? What have you done for us?
I just want to hear the crock of shit that we're gonna get from him for this next go round. Like as you start talking, you start campaigning. What are you gonna tell the people? What are you gonna tell the people that stood on business when it was going out and standing at them polls in the heat, fighting against these, um, laws
Right.
that, yeah, I guess you could call them laws, right? The laws that were created in these cities and states to stop them from voting, that actually went out and did what they were supposed to do to get you in there, and you gave this broad speech of I'm going to get rid of student loans, and now you're qualifying that bullshit by only getting rid of this percentage of student loan. Well, if you're a veteran or if you've been paying that shit faithfully for 27 years, like newsflash, half of them people are on their way out. You know what I mean? Like it's just is wild. And realistically, ain't nobody paying them shits.
Yeah. I
Telling
mean,
me if in order to get them shits waived, I had to have been paying them shits and not missed a payment for
for
like
10 years.
35 years or some shit. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
if you're in the service field or some field of service, it would be
Yeah,
10
that's the
years.
service. But I mean
But
just the general individuals, the old people that's like 60 years old that's just getting that relief. Like I'm 60. If I've been paying that shit since I was 30 years old or 25 years old or whatever, I'm probably broke. my my way of living has been terrible.
yeah, and I mean, again, if you're investing, for me, it just makes it just makes common sense, right? If we're talking about reinvesting in our nation and economically, just wipe the shit. Because you wipe the shit, people are gonna spend, they're gonna do things, they're gonna open up businesses they wanted to open. It'll make the economy much better. It would. Easily, very easily. And
Yeah.
all of the aid that we're giving to other nations, it's like a slap in the face every time. Every time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's just, obviously there's promises that are made. Um and you just can't keep them. You can't. That's like you promising your daughter to buy her a Mercedes Benz when she turns 16. You don't know what the price is gonna be. You don't know where you're gonna be, you know, at that time. Like I've learned that over the years. My pops was like, "Yo, when you graduate high school, I'm gonna buy you a car." Oh shit! Just make sure you graduate. Oh shit! I'm getting a car. But I graduate, I don't get a car. I'm frustrated. I get it, right? I understand because we ain't got it. But that's kind of what's happening. Like you make these promises and you can't even get your own fucking party in line. Joe Manchin is running your party. Like you can't get your own party in line. So I need you to get your shit together. And I don't know what business you standing on for this next go round, but it's gonna be a fight.
Well,
It's gonna be a fight.
I think you asked one of the better questions. What are you gonna be able to tell the people this go around? Oh, I tried to do this, I tried to do that, but they did this, they did that. Nobody wanna
They
hear that
blocked
shit.
me.
Nobody
They
wanna hear
blocked
that
me.
shit. They don't
Yeah,
nobody wants to hear that shit.
nobody wants
I mean,
excuses.
it's just like it's just what it is, man. It's just business. Like people want results. That's just what it is. We could talk about the minutia of all of that shit. We get it, but people want results. Do something. Make it happen. Make it happen.
Yeah, that's a big one, and it's gonna be needed. It's gonna be necessary because a lot of motherfuckers uh don't like what's going on in the world, and they blaming Joe. And it's not Joe's fault what's going on in Israel and shit. But depending on what side of the coin you're on, you may not back all the decisions that him and his people are making, or the United States as a whole are making. As we
Yeah.
welcome VP to the conversation. Better late than never, but never late is better. We're talking about I don't know how we landed on that. We was talking about the Sagittarius season. Real Sagittarius, not boneless Sagittarius, not that November 22nd shit. This is real Sagittarius, December 1st to the 21st. We outside spending money even though we broke. Thanks to Joe. So
That's how
welcome,
we got
VP.
there because you blame Joe for being broke.
Well, it's true. It's true. Did you guys do any Black
Uh,
Friday shopping? VP don't want to respond to us. He want to sit there like he
I
mute.
was about to, and you changed the subject. So, I was, you know.
Yeah, he went back to some shit we already talked about. Go ahead, VP.
Oh no, I was just going to say, you know, this week I've actually thought a lot about this with the as far as 2024 coming and what Biden is facing and things like that, as it seems more and more likely that Trump is going to be the nominee. We see other candidates looking weaker and weaker, like his top rival DeSantis. You're starting to see the money go behind former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador Nikki Haley. So it looks like the field. I don't. It's not going to happen like just yet, but it looks like the field is going to probably start to clear, and it'll be like a one-on-one between her and Trump. She's still going to lose, but I think that it's her trying to set herself up for 2028. But with that being said, in terms of Biden, 2024 versus Trump, my answer to that, to everything that you guys say and every other criticism that anyone else says about Joe Biden, is I don't give a fuck. At the end of the day, we have one guy who's running who is literally telling us that he plans to be an authoritative dictatorial leader, that he plans on removing this country, separating this country from its allies, removing it from the world stage, backing out of agreements that we have with NATO and other countries around the world. He plans on restricting voting rights. He plans on putting cronies into positions of power within the Justice Department and throughout the government. He plans on destroying the regulatory state. He plans on appointing even more right wing judges and taking away more rights from American citizens. So at the end of the day, for me and for everyone else, this 2024 election should be simply a vote for either you're voting for democracy and Joe Biden, or you are not going to vote, or you're going to vote for Donald Trump and autocracy. And regardless if you vote for Trump or you don't vote at all, the result is the same. It's a vote for Trump. All the other shit to me is just it's bullshit. It's noise.
What do
I get
you
what you're
say?
saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to discount what you're saying. It may sound like that,
Discount,
but
double check.
I'm not. But I'm saying at the end of the day, that shit doesn't matter.
None of it
EJ
matters to
knows
you.
this. EJ knows this because he's a little bit more politically active than you are, Steve. But you've seen this as well.
You
Since
know my
I've been
life.
old enough to vote, I've been told that every election is the most important election of my lifetime. And a lot of times that stuff is bullshit.
Hmm.
I actually do feel like this 2024 election is the most important election of my lifetime, given what the person who's running on the other side has said they plan on doing. And I can't sit on the side, and I mean I wouldn't sit on the side regardless, but I don't have time to like try to wade and swim through all the bullshit in order to say this is why we should vote for this guy. At the end of the day, one guy is promising to destroy my country, and the other one, maybe he didn't do everything he promised to do, but he's not promising to destroy it, and that's enough for me.
What do you say to the people that um make mention of Trump saying all this shit before and it not happening? And assuming that he's just saying this, of course, to get the backing of the scumbags that back him.
So what I would say to that is that what people have to understand is that when I've said this before, that I don't actually believe Trump wanted to be president. I think this whole thing was a publicity thing, and he thought that he would lose and then use it, parlay it into more money somehow, right?
Hmm.
It ends up happening, and he has no clue what to do, which is why there was no government in waiting. Typically, when a new person is elected president, they start immediately making announcements on these people are going to be my cabinet secretaries. This person is going to run this agency, et cetera, et cetera. And it took Trump almost a month, maybe a little bit over a month, before he started announcing people who were going to run the government. And then when we see the people who were running the government, it was people with little to no experience. By doing that and putting people who were like solid Republican institutionalists, those people were able to block some of Trump's worst impulses, right? Example, in 2020 during the whole thing after the election, but before January 6th, when they're trying to figure out how they're gonna, get it flipped to Trump from Biden or whatever. There's a meeting in the White House on December 18th, and Trump tells them that he wants to appoint this crazy lady, Sidney Powell, who's charged in the Georgia RICO case. She pled guilty about 2 weeks ago. He wants to appoint her as a special counsel, and he wants to have the Department of Homeland Security seize voting machines in Georgia. Trump gives that order, and his people in the Justice Department, including his White House counsel, tells him, if you do that, we're all going to resign. We're walking away. And then she says when she started cooperating with the feds, that Trump turned to her and says, you see what I got to deal with? Now, this is the president who just gave his people an order, and they basically tell him, fuck that, we're not doing it, But that's because he had people in there who actually were institutionalists. They don't believe the same things that I do in terms of what the government should or shouldn't do. However, they still were more loyal to the country than they were for Trump. Trump has promised this time that he's coming in with the list of roughly 25 to 50,000 people that he's going to appoint throughout the government that are going to be loyalists. So this time around, there aren't going to be people who say, we can't do that. That's against the law. They're going to be people who say, yeah, how can we, the law says this, but how can we kind of skirt the meaning of these words to do this?
That's what Biden need to do with these damn fucking student loans. That's what we saying. Man up. We mad at Trump for doing that, for supporting his people and giving them what they fighting and asking them for. We need Biden to do that shit.
I disagree.
This is my thing. Hold up, VP. You hijacked this for a little bit.
No, go ahead. I didn't hijack it. You guys asked me a question.
No, this is my thing. Yeah, right?
And I you should be a saxophone player.
I agree with you. I agree with you in what you're saying, that Trump obviously by no means Trump should win, right? I understand that. But the problem with what you're saying is, I don't care about, or maybe this guy didn't deliver. The problem is his ineptitude to bring the people what they want is what deters people from voting for him. So the thing is, you can't keep trying to tell people who are hurting, that aren't sad enough to understand what you understand, that it doesn't matter that you didn't deliver on your promises, because essentially in that sense you throw away the importance of the whole democracy you're trying to protect. You're basically telling people to vote for nothing. Just vote for the best, not worst case scenario, which we get it, but you're not delivering them anything at the end of the day. So let's just say this: Biden then does become president. Sure, great that we didn't have Trump, but you didn't do anything for the people. And then the people continue to see you send billions of dollars across seas, and then we create another monster down the line. And then guess what? In 2034, you're going to be sitting here with somebody far worse than Trump opposing the democracy, and you're going to say this is the most important election of our lifetime because we haven't delivered to the people, and some other asshole from the right comes in and says, you know what? 10 years ago, they didn't do anything for you then. So now what? You can't just keep telling people that it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying you're incorrect that Trump doesn't need to win, and by all costs, I get that. But at some point, as a party, as a people, our elected officials have to deliver, and they have to be held accountable. They have to.
And I don't necessarily agree with anything. I don't necessarily disagree with anything that you just said. However, what I will say is that, people have to also take some fucking responsibility, right? And what I mean by this is that responsibility and understanding what the fuck is happening in your country. It's your country too, right? And not you. I'm talking your generally, right?
People.
And what I mean by this is that people go out and live their lives, right? They go to work, they pick up the kids, they cook dinner, homework, whatever, and don't pay attention to anything. And then they say, in this case, you two are talking about student loans. Promises made, promises not kept. They didn't do the student loan thing. They did do the student loan thing. It got blocked by the court. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, but you knew that was you knew that was coming. You knew you wasn't gonna be able to win that. You basically, it's just like I said, you just dangling a carrot. Hey, I got this lotto ticket for you. It's a possibility that it might win if these numbers get pulled. It's a 1 in 4, 5.5 billion chance that you might actually get your student loan credit of whatever he promised, 20,000, then only went with 10 or some wild ass shit.
So I hear what you're saying, right? But at the end of the day, you know, Biden and his folks are looking at themselves as following the law. The HEROES Act says that the Secretary of Education can modify any loan through the Department of Education. He modified those loans by the 10,000 for most, 20,000 for some, depending on your situation. And then the court said, no, you can't do that.
This is where I think it gets super challenging.
Real quick, Steve, before you say the next part here. Also, what's interesting about that whole thing is that they did the student loan forgiveness program, right?
Mm.
And then you had multiple Republican attorney generals from multiple states throughout the country, led by the state of Missouri, including the state of Texas, and on, that filed a lawsuit that blocked. You don't hear people saying, man, these Republicans fucked up student loan. They keep blaming him for it. He did it.
Well, they're not blaming him for fucking it up. They're blaming him for promising something that didn't happen, regardless of what the roadblock is. When you talk about politics, when you talk about politics, is probably more important than business. In business, when you go to work and you make a promise, you can't just come in there and be like, well, the dude next to me held me up. He didn't show up to the meeting, so we didn't get it done. School. Oh, you had a group project. Yeah, VP didn't show up, so we didn't do the project. Like, you got to come with some type of tangible information for the people to be like, yo, this wasn't done, but this is what I'm gonna do to make it happen. Whether that means you're gonna make it happen exactly the way he said it, or you're gonna come with some other alternative. But the alternative that you're coming with is beneficial to such a drop in a bucket that it means absolutely nothing, right? And so now what's going to happen, I think, in this next election, which is going to make it a bitch for Democrats, is you're going to now have two people that we've seen consecutively in office, 4 years for this guy, 4 years for this guy, and people are going to look at what was the state of the country when this guy was in office and what was the state of country when this guy was in office. Nobody's going to be looking at, well, let me not say nobody, that's a broad word. The majority of people that are not politics savvy are not going to sit there and look at these the fucking judge that Biden put in place. They're not going to look at, oh, well, he put a black woman in there, Ketanji Brown. No, that's not what the majority of people are looking at. They're going to look at, yo, the price of a fucking carton of eggs is $5 more right now. I'm exaggerating, of course. They're going to look at, we sending money to Ukraine. We sending money to Israel. Whatever that looks like, right? And someone who does the research, you probably know better than I do. EJ knows better than I do, but I know better than most of them do what's happening because I deal with you. But most of these people don't know that. So they're just going to look at it at face value and say, yo, when Trump was in office, stock market was up. I was making money. Over here, Biden's in office. I'm not making money, or I'm driving Uber to make money, and they're calling that jobs increasing. And here we are.
Okay. And I hear you, right? And I would say to those same people that they're fucking lying to themselves if they think, oh, well, things were just great under Trump and now they're terrible. You know what I mean? Because under Trump, the stock market is up. Under Biden, the stock market is even higher than it was under Trump. So if your thing is stock market and you're saying it was better under Trump than it is Biden, you're fucking lying to yourself. Those are just facts.
Right.
You know what
but
I mean? They're
Pete,
pure
you have
facts.
to you have to look at ratios, right?
No,
Sure,
no.
it's up, but the price of everything is up too. So if inflation is at an
I'm getting ready to go there
all-time high,
next. I'm getting
like,
ready to go there
but
next.
but the
I'm
problem-
kind of going point by point.
The problem to what VP was saying about people and what they should know. Again, VP, you're talking like what my uncle used to say. You want it what it is versus what it ain't. And again, yeah, every American should take pride in knowing their politics. But most countries, when you go to a lot of places, they know politics because they've been more impacted with having people in leadership that have done more, authoritative type things. So people are more savvy. In America, we know our people. People are living in a fantasy world. They don't care. People living in the urban cities, the urban ghettos that have to live in literally cities that are like war zones. They don't give a fuck about that shit. And for us to sit here, and I'm not saying you, but I'm saying for the notion of to sit on a perch and say, well, you should know better. Motherfuckers don't care. When they're trying to find another pot to piss in, another carton of eggs to buy, they want fucking results. And at the end of the day, right? Let's say we get this guy in office. When the fuck are you gonna do what you're supposed to do? You have the ability to send all this money across the seas. You make should happen without nothing. The Asian Americans in this country are getting attacked. You passed that bill, but black people still don't get shit. And you're the president that sat on national media saying that if you don't vote for me, you're not black. But you haven't done a goddamn thing for black people. And we're wondering, we're seeing a trend of black people turn to the conservative side. We wonder why. Because this party for the last 40 fucking years, there is a trend. It's a factual trend. It is a factual trend.
The numbers don't bear that out. It's more of a talking point.
I know we hate to I know we hate to admit it, but numbers don't tell the whole truth. They tell a story, they don't tell the whole truth. We know there is a trend. The reality is, for the last 40 fucking years, black people have been told by this party that they give a fuck about us, but they haven't done shit for us. It's just what it is. This is what it is.
Look, I hear you, and you know, I get it. You know, people, you know, are struggling or whatever. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, right? As I said this earlier, I'm gonna say it again. It's your country too. You know what I mean? And you should not feel any sense of pride. Good morning. You should not feel any sense of pride or, you know, whatever, or not even pride. You should feel, you know, disappointed in yourself if I ask you to explain to me the nuances of what happened between Diddy and Cassie, and you can get into the granular details of the lawsuit, and you can't tell me who your congressman is. If you know what I mean, like this, like some of this. I mean,
I think there's truth to that.
I get what EJ is saying, and I don't think that the points that he's making is necessarily wrong, right? And I hear the passion and all that stuff like that. You know what I mean? But and to Steve's point as well. But people have to take some responsibility as for what is happening in this country as well. You know what I mean?
I think there's truth to that. Two more things and then we'll wrap on this. But the one thing I would say to that, VP, is I agree that it's valid to say that you shouldn't know about Diddy and Cassie or all the other stuff that's put on social media and not know who your congressman is. But the problem is those same people are the people you're asking to vote for you. So you can't come out here and say, hey, you shouldn't know this, and then be like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to dangle this carrot for you. Go ahead and vote for me, and then not do it. Because their optics and their visuals is what I've been saying for years is what they're seeing of the Democratic Party. The second thing I'll say is, if you can give me, and I'll ask you, tell me one thing under Trump that people in that 4-year span, forget COVID, that impacted the bulk of Americans, right? That he did so bad that impacted the bulk of Americans. And then I'll ask you one thing that Biden did that was so great that impacted the bulk of Americans. And I'm not talking about like you know, again, we're talking about Ketanji Brown. We're talking about that stuff. That's not what I mean. To you, that's great. And to a lot of people that understand that, that's great. But when you're talking about the masses are looking at homelessness, the masses are looking at inflation, the masses are looking at Ukraine money, and they don't understand, like you understand, that this comes from a defense budget. People are looking at this like, yo, because the headlines say Biden just sent another couple billion, Biden lost 700 million, Biden did this. So people are looking at that headline. Him and his team are not doing anything to refute this, and that's where it's going to be really, really challenging for Democrats to win, I think.
Okay. Two things. Let me address that last part you did first, then I'll answer your question. In terms of excuse me. In terms of, you know, people seeing headlines and stuff like that, that's also part of the problem, is that the media. Now, his administration does refute this stuff, but you know, people maybe they don't see it. You know what I'm saying? I've even seen people like McConnell going out refuting this stuff about us sending money to them, saying it comes from the defense budget and things like that, but people aren't paying attention, right? With that said, you said one thing that Trump did that was bad, one thing that Biden did that was good, right? One thing that Trump did that was bad was he allowed a pandemic to rage out of control and kill over 750,000 Americans on his watch within a 8-month span. That's one thing that he did that was bad.
Is that controllable?
I don't.
Is that
I wouldn't.
was that a reaction of one of his actions?
I would think so. By pretending that the virus wasn't as bad as it was, by putting someone in charge like Jared Kushner, who was a 30-something-year-old real estate developer, had no science background. The dude, we found out from congressional hearings, literally went on Facebook and asked somebody in like a Facebook doctor group chat, like, what do people think they should do for COVID, to get answers. Literally, not making that shit up or whatever. It sounds like something that should be made up when I'm trying to exaggerate something that happened under them, to just because I don't like them. But that's what they did. It's shit like that is what makes me so upset when people consider voting for this guy. Is that this people put idiots in charge. You want to talk about Israel and shit like that. Jared Kushner, the same 30-something-year-old real estate developer who's married to his daughter, his son-in-law, he put him in charge of the Israel-Palestinian peace process. If Jared can't solve this, nobody can. That's a quote. The 30-something-year-old guy who only job he's ever had in life was working for his father's real estate company is the guy who's going to get Mideast peace. Not some guy who's been a diplomat for 30-something years, who has a PhD in international relations or something like that. This guy, the 30-something-year-old who has his largest accomplishment in his life is that he's fucking my daughter. He's gonna solve it. Come on, Doug.
But you know the problem here though, right? And I think both of you guys kind of touched on it. Didn't say anything. Like, well, while saying something, VP, you talk about the people that know about the Cassie and Diddy stuff. That speaks to the everyday American and what they care about and what matters to them. And whether it's right or wrong in the eyes of others, that's what the truth is, right? And instead of doing and tapping into that base of your people, to Steve's point, you have the resources, you had the Jeezys, you had the you have the Jay-Z's, you have the people that talk to the masses of people in their language that they can understand. And the problem is you don't tap into them until it's time to ask them for a vote. And that's the problem. You go on avenues and outlets like the Breakfast Club when it's time to get a vote. But when you need pressure applied, when you need to educate people about politics, you're not here. Kamala had the whole Chuck's thing and was tapping into the sororities and the fraternities. And where has she been since? She hasn't tapped back into that well. And this is a problem that our modern Democrats have had for the last probably 10 or so years. We talk about it all the time when Michelle went to different campuses and was the closer for Barack. We don't, as a party, go back and tap into that well the same way the other side does. And that's a problem. That's why we can't really have our people in spaces to understand. If you look at the poem by Rudyard Kipling, if you could walk among and not lose the common touch, the Democratic Party just comes around to walk around you and have the commoner's tongue or commoner's touch when it's time to get votes. But then when some real shit is going down, we turn around. Where are you? You're not here. You're not on the Breakfast Club again. You don't let Jeezy in the White House after he made a multi-million-dollar song saying my president is black. Where are you?
You know what, EJ? This may surprise you. I think you're right. But at the end of the day, I think part of the issue with that, and not issue, I guess why it happens is that I think folks from that side, because people in the Democratic Party are more institutionalist than Republicans are, it's like, let's activate our base to vote. Now we have to go and govern, right? And so, if you look at two presidency or three presidencies juxtaposed to each other back to back, right? And what I mean by that is, like, you look at Obama. Obama gets elected. He's in DC. He's doing his thing. He gets out of office. He leaves. Trump comes in. He gets elected, and he gets inaugurated on January 20th. On January 21st, he announced his re-election campaign, so he can start raising money. The week following, or not the week, it was 2 weeks later, he started doing rallies, and then he would do 3-4 rallies a week because he wasn't spending time governing. You know what I mean? and this allowed him to keep his base activated and motivated and things like that. And I know your next question may be, why aren't Democrats doing that? Because we see Joe Biden comes in, he activates his base by doing the things that you talked about, and then he says, okay, now I'm in DC, I'm governing, I'm not out in sororities with Kamala and on the Breakfast Club, etc. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I look at it like this country needs to be governed. It's not like having rallies 3 or 4 times a week is not what's gonna like make this place run properly. You know what I mean? So I think that's why.
You
I'll
see
leave
it.
it.
You see it as governing and the American people with simple, just looking at simple hindsight, what they can see in front of them. They see it as being fleeced. It doesn't take
Pandering.
1,000 rallies. It's pandering. It doesn't take for you to have to rally to 60,000 people. Again, you're the president. Make some time. The same way you have time to have interviews with people. Send your PR people. Make one of your PR people somebody, an ambassador. Make some new shit. Do something. Have someone create some type of political summit that connects hip hop, that connects athletes. You got some of the most influential people that would help you at any time. The LeBron fan base out there. Tap LeBron. Make some new shit for NBA ambassador. Something, anything. Do something creative, because for people like me, it looks like the same old fucking story every year. That my party, I vote for you. I come out. I wave the flag and don't do anything. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
And I would
Every
argue to
year.
you, EJ, that they do that to an extent, right? Not as hard as you're saying, but I would say to an extent. What I mean by that is that if you just go on to the Breakfast Club's website or their YouTube channel or whatever, you can find a bunch of interviews with Pete Buttigieg. He's probably the best communicator in the Biden administration who talks about what they've done, and he's always on the Breakfast Club talking to them about stuff that this administration has done. You know what I mean?
And he's boring. Nobody cares about anything he says.
But this is
Who, Buttigieg?
Yeah.
Well,
but I
I
mean, you're
mean,
saying like get them out there, and then I'm telling you they have people out there. You're like,
if
Like,
they're smart, they they would use
one person. Yeah.
Buttigieg. If they were smart, they would use him,
They do.
because in
they
our
do.
community,
try.
He's always out
no,
there.
I mean they would use him, because in our community, they're always magnifying homosexuality. So you would want someone that can relate, just like Joe is trying to relate to blacks by using Kamala. Relate to
Kamala.
that demographic using
Kamala.
booty.
Yo,
Kamala.
I get it, but I mean, again, this is the same guy who couldn't get any steam running himself. Nobody gives a fuck about him. I'm saying, went on the Breakfast Club yourself as the president-elect. You had rappers, athletes, stars come to your house. You had cookouts. You had all this shit. But when it's time for you to actually get a message out, don't send me the blue collar dude from the Midwest. It doesn't rock to me in DC. It doesn't rock to me in Miami. Send me fucking Rick Ross. Send me fucking Meek Mill. Send me fucking Jay-Z. Send me somebody I can relate to. Send me Taylor Swift.
Joe.
Send me somebody that American people we know are brainwashed to certain things that they are brainwashed to. You have the ability to take advantage and take leverage over the right if you just listen and follow what the people want. Nobody fucking relates to Pete Buttigieg. Nobody, not even gay people.
Yo, yeah, I just think it's gonna be a tough election for Trump, or for Biden, because of optics. If nothing else, because of optics, it's gonna be a really, really tough election for him, and he's gonna be out of practice. He ain't been in front of the American people in quite some time, and he's aging. He's gonna be up there like the Crypt Keeper. It's about to be real nasty. They're gonna eat his ass up when he start tripping over his words. So he's basically going to hope that people do the morally sound thing again when they vote. oh, I'm gonna vote for the good guy. Well, eventually people are gonna start being like, that good guy ain't fucking benefiting me. So let me try the bad guy again. And I think that's where we're gonna get to that point, and it's gonna be bad, man. It's gonna be really bad. Hopefully, not this election, and maybe next election we'll get somebody that's a little more competent, and from an age standpoint, not from a knowledge standpoint, because he's been doing this shit for 70 years, so he should know how to do this shit. But just from an age standpoint, we need someone that can relate and understand, be able to read the room. He can't read the room. He's too old to read the room. As are all of them that are in there. Not all of them, but the bulk of them, whether it's congressmen, whether it's senators, whether it's, presidential candidates, they just can't read the room because
Well,
they're
I
too
mean,
damn
I
old.
agree with you. The last thing I'll say on this, because so we can transition. We've been on here for a while. Is that I think you are right about Biden being out of practice. We see that all the time when presidents go. That's why you look at Obama in 2012. His first debate was terrible against Mitt Romney. He got killed for it because he's the president, and like the president, for example, is not used to being interrupted. When he speaks, everybody else shuts up. And now Obama's at this debate and he's saying something around. He's like, no, no, not that's not. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know what I mean? So
And it's
so
gonna be
he's
bad for
definitely
Joe because they
so
got
he's definitely
no
out of practice.
respect.
However, with that said, I think Trump is going to end up doing Biden a favor because he's already talked about, oh, the media is so biased. I'm not going to participate in the presidential debates. So,
Hmm.
that's one thing where, Biden may not have to worry about that. You know what I mean? But I think Biden actually does debate well, but, you never know because it's like you're, talking about whatever your points are, whether people believe them, like them or not. And this guy's throwing shit against the wall.
He's old.
So yeah, so we will see. But even
He gonna
with
be
that being
like what's homeboy name? Tiberius, the king in House of the Dragon. One
oh,
episode
Viserys,
he's
yeah.
he's brash, and then they fast forward and say 4 years later in the next episode or some shit, and he's on his deathbed, like
Right. But
his
the
mouth,
last thing
his
I'll
jaw
say,
done fell off.
the last thing I'll say on that real quick, Steve, is that to all you guys' point, I get what you're saying. I hear your passion. I feel you, and I'm not necessarily saying that the stuff that you're saying is wrong. What I would tell people is anybody who is within the reach of my voice right now is that don't fuck around in 2024 and then you wake up in 2025 and you're living in North Korea and not the United States of America. You're living in Russia and or a place like China. All those places, Russia, China, North Korea, Venezuela, all of these dictatorial authoritarian states, right? They all have a Congress, they have a Senate or their equivalent of a parliament, whatever they call it, right? They all have their governing bodies, right? But they don't have no rights. You know what I'm saying? And you look at to Steve's point about Ukraine and things like that, right? Over here we say Joe Biden sucks. He didn't do student loans. He's sending too much money to Ukraine. Boo, 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 boo. Right over there, they passed a law saying if you even criticize Putin for the war, you're going to prison. People are going to jail for 5, 7, 12 years for saying, I think this war is unjustified. It's wrong. That's it. 5 years. You know what I mean? So
We need to get you. We need to
don't
get
wake
you
up
in
and be
office,
there.
man. We need to get VP in office. He checks all the boxes.
We need
He's
some.
a
We need some.
feminist, a veteran.
Maybe we need. Maybe we need. Some, yeah, exactly. Right, and he's gay. uh, speaking of speaking of standing on
Yeah.
business, yo. You guys, well, Bar, you have a teenage son, 17, right? TJ 17,
Mhm.
gonna be 18.
Yep.
EJ probably a little different because you have a daughter, but in the media this past week, uh, Ti's son King, who we have seen on his reality shows. If you've watched it, I watched it. Kind of growing up with a lot of privilege, being rich, two parents, cameras, beautiful house, all of that in Atlanta or Georgia, somewhere in Georgia. Um, well, we saw him this week or last week at the Atlanta Falcons game. It looked like they were in a suite. He got into it with his mom and dad, Ti and Tiny, for those who didn't see it, and he was really disrespectful Mouth. He talking about I stand on business. He started calling out Ti, talking about I know you. Ti turned to him, said you don't know me, choked his ass up, and then the video goes off. Um, I ask you, gentlemen, how would you react if you were the parent in that situation?
Listen, man. I mean, Ti, I think he handled it exactly the way he was supposed to. You know, at some point, you got to put your arm around your kid and let them know what time it is, man. I mean, even if it risks you losing your freedom, you know, I mean, some point you got to take a stand and let your child know that they've gone too far. You know, especially from a male to male standpoint. You know, and I think he did the right thing. And in sense, it seems like they've kind of gotten everything together and housewise together because they've been putting out a lot of like stuff with them together, working together. I don't know if it came before that or not, and this is just a media tactic, but it was an unfortunate situation. And I think, we really don't know what King might have experienced, coming up, you know what I mean? Because in that essence, in that time frame, T.I. had some money, but he wasn't the T.I. we know now. So I mean,
Mhm.
we talking about a decade or so more before, and he was basically saying, that felt like and raised me. So the kid has some resentment somewhere, from somewhere. Speaking from someone who didn't have a father at all, and I think VP shared the same. You know, I wouldn't take it if I'm Ti. You know what I mean? Like, motherfucker, I put a roof over your head. Let me remind you what this is really about. And I think he did the right thing because a lot of kids today, growing up fatherless, need to get hit over the head at some point. So I think he did the right thing.
Yeah, I actually wasn't familiar with this incident. I was at while EJ was talking, I was trying to speed read through something, and then Steve's description of it. So like when you say he did the right thing, like did he check him,
He put him
or
in a headlock. They were basically King was basically like on live and he was like going crazy. He was just basically yelling at his mother, getting into it verbally with his mom. Cause T.I.
Gotcha.
was basically cracking on him like, yo, you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth. And so he started to get agitated. And then you could tell Tiny was like closer to him and was probably like trying to stop him. But then he started to kind of get disrespectful towards Tiny. You can't really see what he's doing to her, but just the tone of what he's saying, and just you could see, like, you could hear from proximity, like he's close to her and he's just not respecting her to some degree. And then Ti enters into the frame, and you could tell physically he got with him, and he was like, you could tell he got with him. So it was one of those moments. It was that Jody and Melvin moment, kind of.
Gotcha. So then I would say it sounds like Ti handled it correctly, but the degree of how he handled it, I'm thinking might not have been enough. You know, and it's funny that you bring this up because I was actually having this conversation with one of my wife's friends yesterday at the tournament that TJ had, which he did terrible in, by the way. And we were talking about this. I was telling her, we were kind of talking about growing up and stuff, and I was telling her about this one time that my mom, laid hands on me, and I was like, I was always afraid of my mom, because like I was bigger than her from the time I was like 11, but even if she pissed me off enough to where I even thought to, come at her sideways or even, like buck up, I had that thought in the back of my head, like, yo, this, she's smaller than me, but I have to also account for, I think that she's fucking crazy. And
Mhm.
she might even be crazier than I think. You know what I'm saying? so I had to, so I always had to factor that in anytime I even considered, you know what I mean? And so I'm a firm believer that children should have a reasonable amount of fear of their parents. You know what I'm saying?
Some straightening.
And right. And so for him to grow up the way that he did, to have the kind of privilege that he does, you know, um, to live in a neighborhood that he does, and maybe the schooling and education and things like that, that the opportunities that he's been provided based on his parents' hard work, and to buck up like that at his dad, and then also to go at his mom. I think Ti was definitely justified in whatever he did, and may have needed to take it a step further, and gave him some work. You know what I mean? Like I'm yeah, yeah. I think it was totally fine. Nothing here for me, unless the argument is didn't do enough.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say that, right? And like normally for me, I would be like, nah, you got to do that. You got to hold them immediately accountable. And if you got to put hands on them, you got to put hands on them. But I don't know if that could have the adverse effect, right? You're looking to correct this behavior, and now you could send this kid on like a Hunter Biden binge where he got strippers, guns, and coke in a hotel room somewhere. You know what I mean? Like you always have to think about the impact it's going to have mentally on the kid, especially being in public like that, right? Like being in public. Ti, I think for him, it's probably an ego thing too. Partially, it's an ego thing. He calls himself the king of the South. He stands very high on his reputation in Atlanta, and now you're at the Atlanta Falcons game and you acting a fool. So I do think there's an opportunity, and he does have to do something. We didn't get to really see the extent of what was done. Hopefully, if it was just what we saw, where it was just an arm around his neck, that's one thing. But I saw people talking about, oh, I would have took him, down the hall, and then we would have squared up. I'm not doing all that. I'm not. And I don't think he should have to do all
VP, is this the same guy that said T Morant was failing Ja Morant because he didn't step in and check this kid? Is this the same guy?
that. Yep,
Aha.
that is.
Yeah. Hey,
Uh,
look, I hear what you're saying, Steve, and I get, especially like when you bring up the Hunter Biden stuff. Like you definitely don't want your kids to spiral. You know what I mean? But there has to be a level of respect. You know what I mean? Like I gave you life. I put a roof over your head for all these, like everything that you have in this world is because of my blood, sweat, and tears. And then for you to disrespect me like this, that's one. For you to then disrespect me like this in front of company, that's two, because they're in this suite at the game, like you said. And then for you to disrespect me like this live on the internet with your thousands or hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of followers, this shit is like another level. You know what I mean? And this kid needs to be checked. And this is part of the problem, I think, with kids who grow up with privilege. You know what I mean? Because I would have to imagine that if this kid King was same parents, right? But they didn't grow up wealthy, these kind of things likely wouldn't happen. You know what I mean? But I think the privilege is part of the equation that allows this kind of stuff to happen. You know what I mean? The same way we see, those kids. We all grew up. They're not grew up, but we all like have that one friend or somebody we know that was not the same race as us, right? And we see them like "fuck you, mom," and we're like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" Like, you know, and you're sitting there thinking like, "Oh shit, let me back up. 'Cause I know she about to knock his teeth out." So I don't want to catch no
Collateral damage.
yeah, I don't want to be collateral damage. Let me back up a second. Then you see nothing happen, and you're like, "What the heck? Whoa, where they do that at?" You know what I mean? And so I think Ti was right in what he did. You
So
can't
I'll say
like
I
that.
want to address EJ really quick, and I'll hand it off to EJ. There's a huge difference. The difference is John Morant is he's we're depending on him as a family, as a bloodline. There's a lot of people that you employ. There's a lot of people that you impact by these stupid ass actions. You've already made it. You talking about just another badass kid over here. He do need some straightening. He needs some checking. But I'm talking about the people that said, "Oh, you got to go outside and you got to fight him." I'm not fighting my kid like a grown ass man unless there's a line that you absolutely have to cross for that. And I don't think that was that line because I know that you know and that if you get into a fight with someone, you generally black out, and you might forget that that's your kid, and it can get real bad. It get real bad.
But it's not a difference for in that situation. You know, Ja, if anything, I side more with T again because Ja again is a pro athlete, much bigger than his father at this point. And you know, T did everything he could to get this kid to the level that he's at, and he's prepared him with the tools. And like I said to you before, you know, sometimes, and you'll understand, and you know, I'm sure people with older children will understand. Your kids are gonna do shit that you have advised them not to 1,000 times, and at some point you're not going to be able to control them, and that's where Ja was. But to the Ti point, I think there's an underlying issue with society today, especially black folks, and this gentle parenting bullshit. I've dated chicks with sons, and it's like, oh, I've had to call him 5 or 6 times, and he went out of my eyesight, and you know the way that they let him respond, like, you remember when you grew up and your parents called you, you had to be like yes, or Vari, you know, being from the South, probably yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You know, these kids today, what did you say? And the way they talking to their mom, just like, and it's like it's not because you single, it's because you being on that gentle parenting bullshit. Like VP said, my mom was by herself. She would be shit out of me if I ever did that. And when I got older and bigger and stronger, I still respected her enough to where I didn't do shit in front of her. I did a lot of foul shit that she didn't know, but I'm not going to disrespect her in front of me. I mean, in front of her, you know what I mean? So it's that gentle parenting generation, and I'm looking at these people. I'm looking at these women with these kids. Yeah, you sending them to all of the finest schools where he's around children that do bullshit, you know, because of their ethnicity, and he thinks it's okay, and you're not correcting them. So this is why when they become king's age and they're 21 years old, and you're like, boy, you grew up in the county, boy, you had all of that, all of the resources you had, I put you in the best schools, and you wonder why he's in Baltimore City doing some bullshit because you didn't whoop his ass. He has no fear of consequence. And some of these guys that I had in jail with me, they never had been checked or had any fear of consequences their entire lives, and their first time getting that is when they come with the jail system.
Yeah, and I would have to also say, like to EJ's point, with my mom, even when I became an adult, I come home from the Marines. You guys know how I talk. You know what I mean? I didn't even curse around my mom because that's how much respect I had for her. And this is me as a grown ass man in the Marines, and so so I would have to think, like to EJ's point, that level of discipline, of instilling respect and things like that in one's parents is not that it's not happening with that kid. It didn't happen with that kid or likely those children, and it's probably because of how privileged their life and background is, given that it's one thing like if you were born in all the stuff like Ti talks about in his music and things like that, and then he gets famous then, and you kind of grow up as the lifestyle is changing. But these kids kind of were born into that privileged lifestyle and had it their whole life, and now you can see this kid at however old he is, either late teens, early 20s, or whatever, dreads, neck tattoos and shit, probably has no job, aspires to be a rapper who's gonna get famous off of his dad's name and influence and connections and things like that, and not have to really do anything that any normal person's kid would have to do when growing up. And so he feels like he's has the rights to shit on his dad or whatever, because he might feel like his dad didn't do enough for him. Maybe when I turn 18, you didn't buy me a Bentley. You're a piece of shit. So you know what I mean? It's just this shit is insane, man.
But that's the other thing too. Before we move on from this, last thing I'll say on it is, you guys mentioned, EJ, you said you were worried about your mom, and I know why. And Vari, you said same thing. You were also worried about your mom, and me the same, right? Like me growing up, there was a belt on the door handle, like, and that belt on the door handle was, hey, if things go wrong, you gonna go get that belt, and it's gonna be bad, right? Um, but the other part is, to all of our points, this kid is 20, maybe 21 years old, 19, 20, whatever, however old he is, doesn't matter. It might be a little bit too late to start trying to parent right now. Where were you? What were you doing? We know, we, like you said, EJ, Tip, it wasn't the Tip we know today. This, he did a stint in jail, right, for the gun charges. He was building this career and building this empire of his, right? So he may not have been there. And of course, he had this, his wife, Tiny, who was doing the same thing, reality shows and trying to get to the bag. So it might be too late for you to try and step in public and be this parental figure that everyone thinks is there. And he's like, you wasn't doing this. I haven't respected you since I was fucking 12. So it could be that piece. But it's man, listen, it's tough being I could tell it's tough being a parent of an older person, and even tougher being a grandparent. I'm learning. I'm not a grandparent, but I'm watching it in real time. But I'll move on from that, and we'll get into. There was a couple other things that we had on the docket. I don't know if we should just get right into it. Like, do we just rip the band-aid off now that VP's here and he's warmed up, his voice is ready to go? Like, are we going ham? We gonna talk about it? Like,
I'm concerned now because I'm not sure where this is going.
will the real
Yeah,
MVP
I have
please
no
stand
idea.
up?
NFL
Well,
MVP.
Yeah, NFL MVP race is heating up, as expected. I mean, we're only about halfway through the season, so there's a lot going on. But
Shit, we more than half, man. We rounding third base.
yeah, you're right. You're right. We had about third base. I'll give you that. But there's a lot of conversation out there. It's happening in our group chat. You turn on TV, you watch First Take, you watch any of these sports channels, they're talking about who is an MVP candidate, who's not, who's overrated. And what are you guys' thoughts at this point? I mean, I guess there's one quarterback who's a week ahead of the rest of the pack, and that is one Dakota Prescott. But so he has a little bit more numbers, yards wise, and stuff like that. But
I'll tell you who Vegas has as the favorite currently.
it's Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah,
Plus
he's
230.
It's gonna be the favorite with the record.
Plus 230. Yeah, and then Dak by +4. Then Patty Mahomes, Brock Purdy, Lamar Jackson, and then Tua, which I think is rather disrespectful. Then Christian McCaffrey, then CJ Stroud, then Tyreek Hill.
They got Tua after Brock Purdy.
They have Lamar Jackson and Tua after Brock Purdy. This nigga's had it. Then they have Tyreek Hill behind all of those guys. Josh Allen after Tyreek Hill. Trevor Lawrence. Jared Goff is still on the board. Russell Wilson's still on the board. Russell Wilson could be a sneaky addition if they do something. Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, Justin Herbert, AJ Brown, Jordan Love, TJ Watt, and Matthew Stafford.
I'm okay with Tyreek being that late, only because of the history of MVPism, right? He's a wide receiver. So, when we look at it, it looks like I think we have him higher personally, like in our rankings. But, when they're looking at just the history of it, Vegas, that is, they're looking at the history of it for a wide receiver or defensive player to get it. The odds are slim to none. So you're looking at odds, and of course, and that makes sense for me. But and Jalen Hurts similarly, right? They're looking at record. The Eagles have the best record in the league right now, but they're going to play against San Fran this week, and then they're going to play against Dallas next week, and they can find themselves with the exact same record as Dallas if both of those teams show up, and if the Eagles continue to play the way they've been playing for the last couple of weeks. I think the Eagles have on paper a really, really good squad. No one you will challenge that, right? And when they play to their potential, they're a very, very good squad. The problem is they haven't really been playing to their potential. They're winning games. They're squeaking it out. They're getting some help from not only from the refs, but also from the other teams making bad decisions, making bad plays, at bad times, bad coaching calls, all of that. So their record tells one story, and we say it all the time. Numbers will tell you a story, but it ain't the full story. So I don't know. I'm torn, right? Obviously, I'm a Cowboys fan. If you couldn't tell. But the way I look at MVP, I've always looked at it this way. Just like the year I feel like Dwayne Wade lost MVP to LeBron, and he shouldn't have. I think it was 2016, if I'm not mistaken, or 06. It was a while ago. But nonetheless, the person that you take away from the team and the team does the worst. And I think Dak Prescott is by far that person. From the team, from the people that are top candidates. What say you?
I hear what you're saying. I I guess what EJ is saying, like those were the odds of Vegas saying who would win the MVP. You know,
Right.
in my mind, I think that the MVP race right now, and this is in no particular order, I would say if you had to go to a top five, that it's Hurts, Tua, Dak, Tyreek, and I would throw Mahomes in there, but Mahomes is not really an MVP candidate this season, you know. But it's because he's Mahomes. That's why he's getting, you know, that kind of preferential treatment. You know what I mean? The Myles Garrett thing, I get it. He has a bunch of, I think he has 13 sacks, 13 and a half, something like that. But that's just not going to be enough. You know, even if he had 20 sacks, I don't think it would be enough, especially since the team is not going to do well, and the voters factor the team standings into the actual vote for MVP. So I would say that would be the top five and really a top four, because I think Mahomes really shouldn't be there. Tyreek is on pace to break the record. He's also on pace to break the record in 16 games and not need the full 17. If Tyreek breaks the record and he doesn't win MVP, I think that it's just a shame. And it's not just me as a Dolphins fan speaking. There is some Dolphins fan bias in it, don't get me wrong. But to have somebody do something that's never been done and not even need the excuse of saying it took him an extra game now that they've gone from 16 to 17 games, I think it's just bullshit. And especially when you look at
what
a guy
record is
like,
it for the people? What record is it?
this will be 2,000 receiving yards in a single season. So it'll be 2,000 receiving yards in a single season. Tyreek Hill is currently sitting at 1,324 yards and 10 touchdowns, and he's on pace at his current pace right now with his current game average. He's on pace to do it in the 16 games and not the 17. And if he has himself one of those games where he puts up like a 230, which could happen today given how bad Washington's pass defense is, he could do it in potentially 15 games, you know. But anyway, with that being said, I just think that it would be screwed up if he got to 2,000 and didn't win, especially to a guy like Jalen Hurts, who, when you look at his numbers, it's all just the touchdowns is why they're considering Hurts, or touchdowns and the standings. But you look at how many touchdowns he's thrown versus how many he's ran, and then how many when they do this 1 yard tush push bullshit or whatever.
8 of them.
That's it's so bogus. You know what I mean? Like, but I mean, I'm not a voter, so at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think Tyreek Hill, and I've said this before, even as a Jets fan, Tyreek Hill needs to be looked at. If he reaches that milestone, and maybe even if he doesn't, I think he needs to be treated like a running back. When running backs have phenomenal seasons, they get MVP consideration. I think it should be looked at in the same way as a skill position. If you're setting records and you're getting astronomical numbers, you should be considered. Jalen Hurts, I think, out of all of the people mentioned, is the worst. I mean, when you're talking about a passer, this dude has had some horrible passing games, right? I think Dak as a quarterback has been the most consistent, in my opinion. And then Tua, I think, is playing out of his mind as well. And I think, while I don't know, I would give him an MVP. He damn sure deserves to be up there. I think Russell Wilson, to me, over Pat Mahomes, if that team can keep winning and make some meaningful, wins against some good teams, and the turnaround that they had after the start of the season that they had, I don't know. he might need some consideration.
I would say real quick, Steve, before you get in there, if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I mean, we have talked about this in the chat, not on pod, I would have said Tua should be your front runner MVP. The turnovers now, I think, are too much of a factor to where he can't be MVP unless, like, he completely turns it around and maybe only throws one or two more picks like the rest of the season. You know what I mean? Is that going to happen? Probably not. Tua's biggest problem with the turnovers, though Steve brought this up, is about the fumbles. Now, if you watch Dolphins games, I think Tua's only actually fumbled the ball, like an actual fumble, like 3 times this season. But whenever there's a problem with the QB quarterback exchange or the quarterback running back exchange, that fumble is given to the quarterback statistically. You know what I mean? And so that's why Tua's fumble numbers are as high as they are, and they skew his turnover numbers. But at this point, I don't think that Tua is the MVP. He's definitely a candidate. But I just think Hurts being up there is just, it's nasty. And especially when you talk about when you make the point about Dak's consistency, I would argue it's been consistency over the past like 5 weeks, not necessarily like the whole season, but, or let me not say he's been consistent, but he's stepped up a level the last 5 weeks, I'll say. Um, um, and a guy like Hurts, who we see him, it's like he's a fourth quarterback this season.
Mm-hmm.
He plays like shit the first 3 quarters, and then he turns it on in the fourth quarter. The defense keeps them close enough. He turns it on in the fourth quarter, and they win. And then he's seen as like this hero. He's Paul Pierce getting out of the wheelchair and bringing the Celtics back to win the game. You know what I mean? And it's like, how do you vote for that as MVP when you have guys like a Dak who's giving you 4 quarters of ball? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Tyreek's not getting MVP. Let me tell you why Tyreek won't get MVP. Tyreek's not getting MVP because he has a quarterback who's in this MVP conversation. So as good as he does, he can throw for 2,000. I mean, he can catch 2,000 yards. He can
cancel each other
score.
out.
They're gonna make it appear. They'll make the case that he has an MVP caliber quarterback throwing the ball to him. So that's where it's gonna, it's gonna hurt him. If he breaks 2,000 yards, is he a high candidate? To me, absolutely, and I think to anybody watching, he should be. But we know how they favor quarterbacks. But when you talk about numbers, right? A lot of people are like, "Why is Brock Purdy up there?" I think Brock Purdy belongs there. I'm in the conversation. Brock Purdy has the highest completion percentage right now. It was Dak before, but he's got Dak beat by 0.1. Purdy is 70.2 completion, Dak 70.1, Tua is 69.8. So it's really, really close right there, right? Then you talk about QBR. Brock Purdy's QBR is 112.3. It's the highest in the league. Dak is 108.3. Tua is 103.7. And it goes in that same order when you're talking about QBR. Touchdowns, Dak's got 26. Purdy's got 19. Tua's got 22. The reason I'm comparing these 3, in case anyone is wondering, those are the 3 that I think should be the front runners right now. I don't think Jalen Hurts belongs in that conversation for the reasons VP mentioned, the turnovers, the fact that he's a second half quarterback and mostly a fourth quarter quarterback, the fact that those touchdowns are his offensive line carrying him and people are questioning whether or not that should even be a part of the game. Like, he's not in the conversation for me. Those are the top 3 for me in that conversation. What separates these guys is generally, I think, for Dak and Tua, is the turnovers. And without even getting to fumbles, we can look at just the interceptions. Dak has 6, Tua has 10. Purdy also has only 6 interceptions. Yards, Dak, like I said, is a game ahead, but he's 32-34. Tua's 31-77, and Brock Purdy is 28-71. And then when you take all of that and you put it together, and then you look at records, I think all 3 teams, well, now the Cowboys are 9-3, but going into the week, we're all 8-3. So those 3 guys, I think, belong, at the top of that conversation. Lamar Jackson, if he was playing better, I think he would belong there. But I think you can take Brock Purdy out. Brock Purdy is not the greatest quarterback. You could take him out and you can slot somebody in there with the weapons they have with Ayuk and McCaffrey. I mean, Debo, and then that defense, I don't think he's the most valuable player to his team.
George Kittle.
George Kittle. I mean, the list goes on. Cowboys are similar, at least on the defensive
CMC.
side. But if you take out, Dak on the offensive side, excuse me,
That team is a 4-win team.
it's tough. You got CD, right? Tua similarly, you take Tua out, we've seen it. We've seen him out of there, right?
That's a 3-win team.
Right. So to me, when you're looking at it, I think those two guys, that would be my argument for Dak and Tua being today, right? Today. Obviously, this can change between now and the end of the season, could change next week, change 2 weeks from now. But today, I think those are the two guys that should be leading the pack. And of course, my fandom and the slight edge that Dak has in the turnover area is what makes me say that today he's my front runner personally.
Yeah, I think I make a valid point in Tua and Tyreek canceling each other out, because I think if one of them are gone from either side of the coin, the other would suffer. And I mean, they're just, both of those guys are just balling together. It's incredible what they're doing.
And EJ, you remember this from college football when Ken Dorsey and Willis McGahee were both Final Five Heisman candidates in I think it was '99 or maybe 2000, and they basically
Yeah.
canceled each other out. And that's how I think it was Maurice Claret that year who got it, or I'm not sure if he got it that year, but that's how that happened. You had the Miami running back and the Miami quarterback. They canceled each other out, basically took votes from each other, and somebody else ended up winning the Heisman or whatever. So I've heard that talked about, that some people were saying that if they're both like basically finalists, one of them would need to bow out to say, I don't even want to be considered, in order for the other one to potentially get it. But like, especially when you talk about, the NFL being a business, how can you expect somebody to do that given like what it could mean for them financially, especially for Tua. Tua's not necessarily in a contract year, but he's eligible to be extended since last season. Obviously, that didn't happen because of the injuries. Now he's having this kind of year. He may go in and say, I want to open up contract negotiations. And why would I take myself out of the MVP race when I'm getting ready to open up contract negotiations? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So I think you're right in that aspect. What I would say, Steve, with your point about Purdy, Dak, and Tua is, while all the numbers that you gave are definitely accurate, when you look at the projections based on where they are, what they're projected to finish at, based on their current pace, with Brock Purdy's current pace, he's only projected to finish the season with 4,400 passing yards and 29 touchdowns, whereas Dak is projected to finish with 4,537 touchdowns, and Tua is projected to finish with 4,934 touchdowns based on their current pace. And so if those numbers bear out, and that's where all three of them end at the end of the season, I don't think you can consider Brock Purdy being a MVP. I wouldn't even like to call him a candidate, given that we've seen previous MVPs have 45 plus 42, I would say 42 plus 100 yards and 30 plus touchdowns, where this guy won't even crack 30 touchdowns. So I just can't see it. And especially 30 touchdowns in that offense. It's not like, he'll put up 4,200 yards, 29 touchdowns. You're like, damn, he did that with those weapons. Like, this guy's a godsend. You know what I mean? Like, to have that kind of offense and you're not even going to crack 30 touchdowns. I don't think that's MVP worthy.
Yeah.
Steve,
what do you say to
the Philly fans that argue Jalen Hurts because they beat you guys and they're 10-1?
There's still, again, there's still a long season to go. Not a long season. There's still a lot of games left to be played. So we're talking today though, right? And when you're talking about 10-1, that is why he's in the conversation, because otherwise I don't even think he would be in the conversation with the play that he's had.
I agree.
I pulled away
Kirk
from
Cousins last year was in the conversation when they were 12-1, but nobody seriously considered him the MVP.
Let me get to Jalen Hurts stats because I skipped over. So the same ones that we talked about with Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Tua. We're looking at completion percentage, right? You got Jalen Hurts is at 67.6%. So he's about 3.5% lower than the lower of the three of those the three of those guys, right? He's only got 2,600 passing yards, which puts him 200 yards less than Purdy. He's only got 18 touchdowns, which puts him 4 under Tua, 8 under Dak, but Dak has an extra game played right now. He also has 10 interceptions, and then his passer rating today is only 98. Let me get to it. I'm sorry, 94.9. So he's way under in those areas. Now, people will say, well, if you take into account his his rushing stuff, then things change, right? Which I agree there. It does. Um, but let's actually look at how much people think it is, because a lot of those touchdowns and a lot of the rushes are 1 yard or 2 yards. So let's see. Dak Prescott has, what is that? 41 attempts for 174 yards. Did I miss?
How many interceptions does Hurts have?
10.
I think it was 10.
Jalen Hurts.
And he threw 4 in one game.
And he threw 4 in one game.
He threw 4 in one game. That's the thing that gets me. He threw 4 in one game.
So he's got 410 rushing yards, 114 attempts, and 11 rushing touchdowns. 8 of them were on the tush push.
That's
so
crazy.
yeah, he's from a stat standpoint, right? From if you looked at, I'm gonna just sort rushing. He's got the second most rushing touchdowns in the league. He's tied with Christian McCaffrey.
He's a running back. He's a running back.
He's got 114 attempts, right? 114 attempts, which puts him. Well, there's a few running backs. There's a lot of running backs ahead of him, but just to put it into perspective, he's got more than Kyron Williams. He's got more rushing attempts than Austin Eckler. He's got more rushing attempts than Jahmyr Gibbs, James Conner, Jonathan Taylor, starting running backs, right? He's got more rushing attempts than Dameon Pierce, starting running back. 410 yards is good. That's, I mean, you can't be mad at him. But he also has three
Steve, but I would also say this though, right? Because when we look at a guy like Hurts being considered for MVP, we have an apples to apples comparison when you can look at Lamar's MVP season. And when you look at Lamar's MVP season, who was the same style quarterback as Jalen Hurts, he passed for 3,100 yards, 36 passing touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, and he had 1,200 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. Hurts is not even near those numbers. And if not for being 10-1, I honestly don't think Hurts will be a serious MVP candidate. A lot of it is the record, because the numbers just don't tell us, yeah, this guy's an MVP. It's people being a prisoner of the moment with the comebacks and things like that. But when you look at the numbers, they just don't bear out that this guy should be MVP. When you look at what his current stats are and what he's on pace to finish with, he's not the MVP.
Yeah, he might damn near have 15, possibly 15, maybe 16 interceptions before the season is over. Maybe more.
Right. And we're talking about that year. Like I said, Lamar only threw 6 that year.
But so here's the other piece to me, right? Here's the other thing is, and this goes across the board when we talk about MVP and where I'm saying Dak is the shit. People have been crucifying Dak every single year because he throws interceptions. He threw them in big areas. He threw so many. He threw more than this person. He threw more than that person. Now that he's under control and he's balling out, nobody's paying attention to interceptions. Nobody is disqualifying individuals because obviously Josh Allen leads the pack, right? And so people just love that kid. But even still, when you come down from him, you're still talking about stepping down to a Tua. You're still talking about stepping down to a Jalen Hurts. These are the guys that are leading. Sam Howell and Josh Allen are tied for 13. Mac Jones has 12. Dobbs has 10. Hurts has 10. Jordan Love has 10. And Tua has 10. Those are the guys that have, and then Jimmy G has 9. And Patrick Mahomes has 9 interceptions on the season. All these great top quarterbacks, these are the best of the best, cream of the crop quarterbacks in the league. Last year, because they didn't have interceptions, Now, Dak is not in that interception conversation, and he doesn't get that conversation. Shaden McCoy, I put that in the chat earlier. This piece of shit says Dak Prescott, last year, he says Dak Prescott's not a good quarterback because he throws interceptions. This year, he said, and in this video I just gave you guys, he's not good because he hasn't thrown interceptions. Well, which one is it? Now you're just showing complete bias. Like I'm on board for the people that come out and they have actual facts to back up their information. I'm even here for Stephen A. Smith because he's the original. I'm gonna make all my ratings by hating on the Cowboys, right? Like I'm here for it. But it's all these other ones that are doing it, and then they're not using the reality of the situation to do it. Like Stephen A. just comes on and says, "Hey, I hate Cowboys fans, and I'm gonna talk shit about the Cowboys no matter what." But these guys, you and I respect it, but you can't come out and be like, "Oh, well, he's good because he's not good because he throws interceptions," and then he cleans up the interceptions, and now you're saying, "Well, he hasn't faced the adversity of interceptions, so he's not good." Come on, dog, you got to make up your mind.
So a couple things. First, on Shady, you have to also remember Shady is a
a woman beater. Shady is a woman beater. That's what he is. Yes, DJ, don't make that face. He's a woman beater.
I missed I forgot that incident.
That's right. I forgot about that too. But I don't remember now. You talking about it.
But I keep receipts. Tyreek Hill is a baby beater. He ain't no MVP.
Shady is an Eagles fan. He, it's the first team he played for or whatever. He considers himself an Eagles fan. He always, whenever he talks about the Eagles, he talks about we, us, we did this, we did that. But yeah. So you have to factor that into the Dak and Cowboys hate or whatever. But even though I think his argument is off base, too, people in the media, they kind of talk out of both sides of their mouths. And what I mean by this is that you'll have a guy who's having a real good season, and they'll say, "Yeah, the numbers look good, but I need to see how he looks when he faces adversity. What happens when the game is on the line and it's only 1 minute and 45 seconds on the clock?" And it's like, isn't the point not to be in those situations? The point is to win games. And if the guy's winning games, like why are you discounting that against them? That seems like what they're doing with Dak. But 3, and most importantly, Steve, and I'm gonna say this from a Tua perspective, but once you look at Dak through this Tua lens that I'm about to give you, everything else will make sense to you. People in the media are prepared. They are willing and ready and waiting to call Tua a bust. The problem is that the numbers don't allow you to do that. You look at the statistics that you just called out a moment ago when we were talking about MVP, the numbers don't say he's a bust. So because the numbers don't allow you to call him a bust, you have to come up with other narratives as to why he's not good. It's because he has the weapons. So any quarterback in a system that has Mike McDaniel calling these crazy plays and Tyreek and Waddle and all this speed, etc., they would be good, right? And then you highlight every single thing that he does that's bad. You blow it out of proportion because end result is this guy is a bust. So you use every other narrative to get you there. And so to Dak wasn't a first round pick. So normally the bust moniker only goes to like first, sometimes second round picks, right? Dak is just a guy who's the starting quarterback because of circumstances. But because of how things started early in his career with having really great performances when he first got put in when Romo got hurt, then taking over the team and not looking so good, the media is ready to say Dak ain't it. They need to move on. Not good. But the numbers don't allow you to do it. And so now you use every other thing to still get you to that same conclusion without having to say it. Look at it from that lens. It all makes sense.
Patrick Mahomes should have 10 interceptions and more because the refs have favorably made calls each interception that he's had past that to turn it over. Just for the record, I just wanted to
I'm gonna shoot Pat Mahomes just a handful of bail, just a little bit, because he don't need it because everybody bails his ass out. But in the conversation of if you take that guy from that team, that team would be over. They'd be over because them wide receivers can't catch the ball. Travis Kelce is clearly on a decline. At least it looks that way. Maybe he just never really got back from that injury yet early in the season since it was a leg injury. But he looks a step slower. He looks like he can't win his routes. Like Pat Mahomes is doing a lot with a little. And
The
thank
refs
goodness
are
for
the
Pacheco.
refs are bailing his ass out a lot.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
We
I mean,
talk about what
he
Philly
could thank
gets.
Taylor
He's
Swift.
the worst.
Taylor Swift
They're
bailed
the
his
worst.
ass
Yeah,
out.
yeah. I mean, refs bailing Mahomes out, and I think also what's hurting him is that last year, when people were like, "How are they going to do it without Tyreek?" and they still win the Super Bowl, right? These guys were still, catching passes. It wasn't like that they were like threats like Tyreek was, but you still had
Mhm.
to at least respect it because if these guys can get open, Patrick Mahomes going to deliver the ball, and so it allowed Kelsey to still be Kelsey. Now he comes into this season, he has the leg injury, like Steve said, and then these receivers seem like they have drastically regressed, and so now DBs is like, okay, we can focus a little bit more on Kelsey because we know these guys are ass. You know what I
And
mean?
they and
So
they and they also we also what the media and the NFL wants to forget and gloss over. If you look at them creatively, they're not doing anything on offense right now. And what's different from them from before? Eric Bieniemy's gone.
yeah, I would agree with that. Now, if you ask, talking head and Chiefs fan Nick Wright, he always claims that Andy Reid likes to keep some stuff in his bag for the playoffs, and you'll start seeing the more creative stuff, when they get to the playoffs. That's yet to be seen. But given Andy Reid's history, I would say he's probably deserving of a little bit of bail just because it's like, the guy has gone to Super Bowl with the Eagles, won two, gone to three with the Chiefs, won two. So, even if the offense doesn't look as great, I would say maybe watch this space just because Andy Reid has at least earned that.
I don't want to be that guy to say it, but it don't matter how creative you get if your guys can't catch the ball. Like they can't catch the ball. These guys,
Not
bruh,
wrong, not wrong.
Terrence Tony, like Sky Moore, they need to get all these guys out of there, bring some guys off of the practice squad and see if they can catch the ball. Because the only one that's doing it is Rashid Rice, whatever his name is. He's the only one catching the ball. He's the only one with a little bit of yak. Like he's getting it done. But other than that, they look bad, man. And as good as Pat Mahomes is, and as bad as their division is, that's kind of what's propelled them to number one and where they're at. And of course, you add the refs into there, sprinkle some refs on it.
Yeah. And as bad as they look though, Steve, the one, not the one thing, I think the other thing that's really benefiting them in the AFC is that they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat, save for when they lost to Denver.
Yep.
But when they've played the top teams in the AFC, Bengals, they lost to the Bengals, I think, right? I don't remember that. None of it, whatever. But they beat the Bills, they beat the Dolphins. They beat Jacksonville, and so now when it's time for seeding for the playoffs, they got all the tiebreakers. You know what I mean? So if they end up with the same record as some of these other teams that are division leaders, they're gonna still have that number one seed, get the first round bye, and be able to play in their building throughout the playoffs because they're gonna own all those tiebreaker scenarios because of all these head-to-head victories with the other teams that are considered to be contenders coming from the AFC side. So, them going back to the Super Bowl again, I don't think it's out of the question, even with their shitty receivers who can't seem to catch because you know we've seen, and this personally in your division, teams can get hot like the Giants. As shitty as we all thought Eli Manning was, it seems like you get this guy in a wild card spot and you can fuck around and win a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? And so
Yep.
and Patrick Mahomes ain't no Eli Manning.
Right. Let me go on record to say the AFC is trash in comparison to what we thought going into it. Remember last year, before the season even started, and then going into the preseason early in the season, we were like, yo, the AFC is gonna be lit. You got Kansas City, who's gonna be juggernauts. You got Oakland, who's gonna be a juggernaut now that they got Jimmy G. The Chargers are still gonna be a juggernaut. We're like, oh, that AFC East is gonna be great. All four teams are gonna be monsters there. Like the AFC has
All three, I would
underperformed.
say four.
Well,
I don't,
true,
I don't think
true.
anybody
3 out of
considered
4.
the Patriots.
75%. But the AFC has underperformed as a conference for what people thought, and we're seeing it in a lot of these primetime games of teams that you're like, this primetime game is absolute trash. But if these guys were playing the way they expected when the schedule makers made the schedule, this would be a really good game.
Mhm.
But yeah, so other than that, from a football standpoint, I'm excited to watch the Eagles 49ers game, and I think that's going to be, we'll see some of, that MVP caliber conversation today. We're going to see these guys are going to have to perform. Both of them are going to have to perform in Philly and San Fran. Other than that, as far as games go today, let me pull up that schedule you sent, VP. There was another one that I was really interested in seeing. I thought there was. There wasn't. There literally is not. Oh, I was gonna say EJ. Your man's is back in there. Flacco is
Aaron,
leading the Cleveland Browns.
I told you. I told you. I told you. And you know what would piss me off if he actually can still play and we didn't keep this guy on the roster. If he actually goes in there and he can actually play and we didn't keep this guy on the roster, I'm gonna be pissed off. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking at this freaking Jets injury report. Brees Hall suffered a hamstring injury. I'm like, when the fuck did this guy hurt himself? Like, he was a full participant on Friday. He was a full practice participant. Like, what is going on? I don't know.
Maybe a walkthrough or something.
I just wonder I always wonder what the hell Salah and them are doing, because these guys have had a couple of instances this year where there's been like late injuries, like Sauce and DJ Reed had concussions like late in the week. Like, what the fuck are y'all doing? You know what I mean? Like, this is another reason why I don't like this guy. Like, why are you running these guys late in the week, late in the season? Stop running them like that. At this point, you don't need to be practicing like that. What are you doing? Like, I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, man. Like, our injury report was, I think we had like 13 guys on injury report. I'm like, God damn. So, but some of it is just like, because my understanding is that if you get treatment for anything, you have to be on the injury report. So like Tua was on the injury report, for example, because he had to get treatment on his arm for that gash. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering how many people on the injury report are actually injured versus just this guy got some treatment on, something, but yeah, I mean, I think Steve has a good point about, the AFC looked like it was going to be the juggernaut conference. And I think it still is to a certain extent. I don't think the NFC, outside of the Cowboys, Eagles, and 49ers is really that strong.
Ain't no good teams. If you
Right.
look at the NFC South, the leader is 5-6.
Yeah. But the problem with the AFC is just, we started off, Aaron Rodgers, 4 snaps into the game, he goes out. So now the Jets are kind of doomed. Burrow goes out. Herbert is just not the guy, and you see Chargers fans, Charger organization like Emmanuel Acho shits on Justin Herbert all the time, and he calls him a social media quarterback. Yeah, he can throw it 70 yards, but he doesn't win games. So you know what I mean? So I was never that up on the Chargers myself personally, but the media was, and the Ravens have looked good, and then Pittsburgh is going to always be Pittsburgh. Tomlin's the coach, and now the Browns kind of caught on, but then their quarterback got hurt as well. So I think the AFC is still the stronger conference of the two this season, even with all the injuries and things like that. But it's definitely not as strong as we thought it would be.
Right, absolutely. And the NFC, I mean, you've got the 3 teams mentioned. You got Eagles, Cowboys, 49ers, and then we all thought maybe the Lions, I guess you could say. But then when you look at the NFC North, you got the Lions, and then everyone else is everyone else. NFC West, you've got 49ers, and then everyone else. NFC East, you got the two teams, and then the other two teams suck. NFC South is just completely horrible. The best team is the Falcons with 5-6 record. They're going into Jersey today to play against the Jets. They may wind up 5-7 or 6-6, just rounding out 500. So I mean, NFC overall is pretty bad. I mean, let's not forget the Ravens got a shit ton of wins.
Is Justin Herbert the new Phillip Rivers?
Yes. And the Chargers quarterbacks will forever be that way. They're
Yeah,
never going to win.
It seems that way right now. He's just Justin Herbert. He benefits from being a media darling. You know, the media loves him, and so he doesn't get as much criticism as he should. You know, I mean, like I talked about Tua for a moment ago with them wanting to call him a bust. You look at the criticism that gets, and you know, some of these other guys who are high draft picks who are kind of talked about as being like the guy, you know, they're going to change this franchise, you know, and he doesn't get the criticism. Trevor Lawrence is another one. You look at Trevor Lawrence's numbers, and they've been, you know, I won't say mediocre, but they're like, there's nothing to be excited about there. You know what I mean?
I
He
think the only
gets
reason he
no
gets
criticism.
bails because how bad that team was prior to him coming in. Because let's remember they were at a race for number one, you know, pick, and our dumb ass team decided to win, then letting them have the worst record, and which we then took Zach Wilson. But I think you're right, and it goes back even to the conversation we were talking about with Joe Burrow versus Tua being injury prone. You know, let's not forget, guys. You know, we've progressed a lot in this league, but it's still intrinsically a racist league. When you're talking about media, especially.
Good point. Even the black media seems to be racist. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's see. So yeah. 49ers and Eagles. That's it from. Oh, I was gonna say that's what I was gonna say. I lost my mind for a second. There was one thing that Tua did really, really bad that you can absolutely call a bus, and it was those cornrows. That was a bad decision. Them cornrows looked absolutely terrible.
Here's my thing, right? I don't necessarily have a problem with the cornrows. Like, they don't look bad to me, right? And he just gets them straight back, pretty much. You know, his hair is long enough or whatever. You know, I'm pretty sure he can get something more intricate if he wanted. He has the money to go to a good stylist or something. But the problem is that the cornrows don't fit the personality. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like when everything happened with Ryan Clark, and he's like, you know, we can get busy,
scrappy.
eh? Or what?
We can get scrappy.
We can get scrappy. You know, and it's like, what?
Scrappy, eh? All right, tough guy.
All right. It's all, you know what it reminds me of?
Killer, easy.
Right. You know how you see those memes, and it'd be like Russell Wilson as an undercover cop, like, 2 drugs, please.
Yep.
Like, that's what it reminds me of. I don't like that, but it's like personality, yo.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's hilarious, yo.
Josh Giddey, a little bit more details came out of his case. Josh Giddey is the nasty man in Oklahoma City, basketball player. Allegedly, that's been, well, not accused, but he spent some time with a young lady who's under 18. She alleges that they slept together. She alleged that they slept together via social media. Now that they've started to introduce legal proceedings here and getting the local police department involved, their family is choosing not to participate or cooperate, for that matter. And so what that tells me is they got a paycheck
of the young lady.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So they're not cooperating with the investigation. So that means they got the money that they probably were seeking, whether it happened or it didn't. But the new details say that this happened 2 years ago. And Josh Giddey's team indicates that he was at a nightclub and he was led to believe that she was 19 at the time. When you lead with that that makes me believe that you went ahead and dibbled and dabbled in there versus just saying, yeah, they spent some time together, but what she's saying happened didn't happen. It didn't get to that extent because they've never said that. They still haven't said that. They're just saying, hey, 2 years ago he met her. He thought she was 19. Well, 2 years ago would have made her 14.
Yeah, and I think that if you know, I always I've said this to you guys before. I think I said it on pod. I'm pretty sure I've said it in the chat, and I tell people this all the time. When you if you ever talk to a lawyer, and EJ knows this, given the work that he does, they'll tell you when you deal with law enforcement or any kind of criminal situation, the very
Shut
first thing that
your
you should
ass
do
up.
is shut the fuck up,
Shut
because
your ass
that
up.
that defense of, oh, I thought she was 19 because we were at this club that was 18 and up, so of course she had to be 18. That's not a defense. You know what I
No.
mean? And so, like, so you already put your, and I know he didn't come out and say anything. It's like a source close to him kind of thing. You know what I mean? But like,
Mhm.
you're already putting yourself behind the eight ball in making a defense like that. You know what I mean? So you just need to shut the hell up and let your lawyer handle this shit for you. You know what I mean? And I don't know why people think that. It's probably one of these things that we have as humans where we think like, if people can just hear my side of it, they're gonna understand. And it's like, no, that's why Miranda rights say you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You know what I'm saying?
If
Shut
they
the fuck up.
if they
Like,
only knew what I was thinking when I was hugged up making out with this 14-year-old, they
right.
would
Like,
then they might understand.
But I think they're throwing that 2 year stuff out there for the fact that 2 years ago he was 19. So I think they're trying to start a narrative to kind of protect this guy. So I mean,
All right, because 2 years ago he was 19 and he thought she was 19. So that would have been, it would have been a match made in heaven. Listen, you
and
can't tell a
well,
14-year-old from a
not
conversation that they're not 19.
not only that. Well, I mean, the conversation, I don't know, because I've always dabbled. I've always punched above my age class, but as you guys know,
Decades
I'm old,
above your age
I'm
class.
old enough. I'm old enough for
older
the
the
mama
berry,
and the
sweeter the
daughter.
juice.
You heard, but I think also because of the legalities, because wherever wherever that happened, it'll probably be in his favor a little bit more, whatever their legal age of consent is.
California.
Mm.
Yeah, and then
You
some of these
they
states
not playing over there.
some of these states have I don't know if they have this where, because it doesn't really even necessarily matter like where they're from, him being in OKC, her being from somewhere in Cali. It matters where the act happened at. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so some of these states have these they call them like Romeo and Juliet laws or something like that, where like if there's like a
Mhm.
pre-existing relationship prior to
Mhm.
the one of the people becoming an adult or whatever, then like it kind of like waives some of the consent stuff or whatever. So who knows, but at the end of the day, regardless of whatever the law says, wherever it happened, shut the fuck up. This is what you got lawyers for.
Listen,
But at the end of the day, man, I, it just it sucks, man. It's almost like, you know, in this day and age, especially given that, I mean, the first time I went to a strip club, I was 16, and so was
Oh,
able to order drinks and everything, and so
I was 14.
it's like if you meet somebody out like that, it's almost like you need to be like, yo, how old are you? Can I get a picture of you? Let me see proof of ID. Let me take a picture. It's like you got to do
absolutely,
your own background check
absolutely,
at this point, just to protect
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
I can if I go somewhere today and you line up 4 women and one of them is four girls and they look exactly the same. One of them is 14. I can tell you within 5 minutes of conversation whether which one is the 14-year-old. No question. Nobody listen. The conversation is gonna be completely different. The lit tick tock. I want to
Yeah,
dance
yeah,
type shit.
but you're also 40 years old, and he was potentially
Even at
19.
19, you gotta know. You can know. And let's go another one. Let's even go further. Let's go further. Let's go past the conversation piece. You can't tell a 14-year-old if they did sleep together. You can't tell.
I'm gonna just say this: there are some working
Some
in
people are more
child
experienced than
services.
others.
I'm gonna say working in child services, we've had some young teenagers that were out here full on pornos, three dudes at one. I mean, it. I'm just saying, shit is different outside. It's different outside. It's hey, another thing. I took my daughter yesterday to her. Here's another thing. These women today, a lot of women today, and I'm gonna say these women, some women today in our community are having parties for these children where they're allowing them to have these like a grown adult birthday dinners at 14, 15. These kids were out. My kid's friend, my oldest daughter's friend, had a birthday dinner party downtown Baltimore in the heart of the harbor with no parental supervision whatsoever. And so, of course, I was taking mine down there and I was hanging out outside. And I say that to say, when I looked at her friend group and what they had on, while I know this kid is that age, I know a 19-year-old motherfucker was not giving a shit because she was looking like she was dressed like
Yeah.
a grown adult. Not
When
giving Josh Giddy any bail in this situation. Just saying, these kids are hot in the ass today.
Yeah, and I remember in high school, I got invited. Well, I wasn't invited. Somebody who I knew was invited. They brought me like to tag along to a Sweet 16, and I didn't know that the girl who Sweet 16 it was. And when she came out, I'm like, that girl is 16? Because, like, I mean, she looked like she was a grown ass woman. You know what I mean? And so I get your point, Steve, but I think EJ is right in what he's saying. You are a grown 40-year-old guy with a lot of experience. If this stuff did happen 2 years ago and this guy was 19, he may not have been as sophisticated, as you think. And then also, given how, I mean, me and you at least have been out of the game a lot longer or whatever, but I'm pretty sure EJ probably could speak to this, is that, maybe if you meet somebody in a club, y'all not really having a lot of conversation. Y'all dancing, you having some drinks, vibing, whatever. Y'all decide to leave with each other. You jump in the Uber, maybe they playing some music, so you're not really talking, and you get back to the crib and go straight to business. You know what I'm saying? And so, maybe he found out later and should have deaded that relationship from the beginning, or not from the beginning, but like right away. You know what I mean? Um, but I could see them getting to the point of the deed without having any like real serious conversation. It's not like they went out on a date, had dinner. Where you see yourself in 5 years? And she's like, oh, 5 years. I see myself at the prom. Like they they met at a club. You know what I'm saying?
Would beat the shit out of him if that was my daughter. Beat the shit out of him.
Well, I mean, you also got a question,
Nope.
and I mean, it
Nope.
could happen in any instance for
I
anyone's
ain't
kid.
questioning
But I
nothing.
mean, well, I'm questioning the involvement of her parents. Like,
Oh, I
is this
got you. Okay.
child, is this child, under, good supervision? We never
Clearly,
know. I
no.
mean, and
Right.
I've seen so many cases where foster kids, foster children, foster girls are messing with older guys because they're out there, they're vagrant and they're not vagrant, they're outside, they're just traveling everywhere, they're running away, doing shit like that. So I mean, we don't know anything about this kid and her background, so I don't know, but it's a nasty
And
situation.
that's a good point, EJ, because that's kind of what happened with the Birdman situation when you look at things from the parents' point of view, where this girl, like she told her mom like she was gonna be doing something with her friend or something like that. And and then she flew out from LA or wherever they're from to Denver to go meet up with Birdman or whatever. And so it's like, you kind of have to wonder like how involved the parents are to where like you letting your kid like go away for a whole weekend without any kind of communication. Obviously, you thought she was going to be with a friend and she done traveled out of state and stuff like that. But parents got to be more on it, especially in this day and age with technology and things like that, where you can have trackers and all that kind of stuff put on your
Air
your um
tags.
your kids' phones and stuff like that. So you definitely got to wonder what's happening with the parentage as well.
Um, 50 Cent is a troll.
Oh, he's a monster.
50 Cent is a troll.
50 Cent won't let
50,
up.
50 Cent is killing Diddy. We saw some additional stuff happen this week where Diddy stepped down from Revolt. He stepped down from a few things. Lost his endorsements and Macy's. We talked about that last week. lost a few endorsements, couple gigs. He's gonna be out of. 50 continues to troll him. Continues to troll. He said, "I'm willing to buy Revolt." He's getting
Said
at him.
50, why 50 said, Diddy, why you ain't sell me Revolt, man? Go sell it to the white man. Yo, 50's wild, yo. 50's a bully, man. He's a bully.
Yeah.
Is that bullying?
50 is a bully. He is a bully for sure. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it is a form of bullying. Is it justified? You can make that argument. It's bullying for sure. But is it justified? I guess is the better question.
50 is a wild boy, man. Like, I think there's some stuff that you fuck with, like you joke with and you troll with. And then I think there's some stuff that you don't troll with. Like that's
He don't give a fuck. 50 don't
this
give a
man
fuck at all.
this man is fighting for his life, yo. Diddy is being compared to R. Kelly. Thank goodness, like I mean, Cassie was 19, but thank goodness she was at least over 18, you know. And they just keep coming, Pauls. Like the allegations for all these for these people. I mean, now it's slowed down because the deadline was Friday. It was almost like like voting, right? It was like, you gotta vote gotta get your early votes in by this date. But just like, oh, wait a minute, he touched me this one time. It's bad, yo.
Columbus Short alleges that Diddy tried him, but I mean that dude. I don't know that you could believe anything that he says because he's
Only
been in
thing I
his
believe
fair
in him
share.
is when he's in Stomp the Yard. That's it. Everything else,
Yeah, he's had his fair share of mess himself.
for real. For real. Domestic violence and shit like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Diddy is just, Diddy is just, and then he's had beef with Rick Ross too, but I'm pretty sure this probably was said before Ross, but it was the first time I heard it was from Rick Ross when he said, God forgives, I don't, and Diddy seems to be like a walking embodiment of that, because it seems like once y'all have beef forever. It's it's
Forever.
it's never it's never gonna be okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 50 don't let up, yo. He does
nah,
not
not
let
at
up.
all. Not at all.
Before we get out of here, tell me your reaction to the House of Dragon um trailer that came out.
Man, I loved it, man. I can't wait. And that was just the teaser trailer. I'm pretty sure they got a more like extensive one that'll probably be like 3-4 minutes long. Because I think that one was only like a minute and a half, something like that.
Mhm.
So I loved it. I'm glad that we're getting closer. 2024. I think 2024 was the original time for them to come back, but I think it was supposed to be early 2024 and not.
Like January.
Yeah.
Or
So I
no,
think the
I
writers.
think it was like March 2024. They
Yeah,
pushed it
so I
back.
think the writer strike pushed it back, but at least at least the year is holding for this point or whatever.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm excited, man. I love the books. I love the original series, although hated the end, like the last like 3 seasons, let's call it. But I'm loving this series so far. And now that we've gotten into the main thing with the Dance of the Dragons, we're not going to be seeing any more time jumps and things like that.
Mm.
So I can't wait, man. I really do like this show, and it's rare, that we get shows that you have the main show and then they do some kind of spinoff and it's just as good or maybe even better. We've seen that in a few instances. I've seen Breaking Bad. I know you guys didn't like Breaking Bad, and Better Call Saul, which is a spinoff. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard like very good things about it. I've seen
Right.
Sons, liked Sons. I haven't watched Mayans, but EJ says Mayans is really good. So but you had a lot of other shows that have tried to do spinoffs and it doesn't work out.
Didn't work
And
out. Yeah.
it seems to be working out so far for this show one season in, and I'm excited and can't wait, man. Especially for the things that we're gonna get this season that come from the books. Um, in like based on where the season ended, like I'm assuming like the next thing that like really like escalates this shit,
She
I'm
about to
thinking that
go
might
crazy.
be episode 1. You know what I mean? So if that happens, it's gonna be like, and it's like, especially if they have the balls to do it, because it's one thing to put something like what I'm talking. I don't want to spoil it for you, but what I'm talking about is something like it's like one of those like, holy shit, I can't believe they did that. Well, actually, you know what? I saw the Red Wedding episode, so I think it's gonna happen. I can't
Oh,
wait. That's all I'm saying.
just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm talking about something happening to a kid is what I'm saying.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I'm here
so
for it. I'm
yeah,
here for it. I'm excited. I liked it. The visuals looked amazing.
yeah,
And that's why when we heard about them taking so long to get back initially, we were a little upset about it. We were like, damn, they're gonna hold us on this fucking cliffhanger for long. But I think initially we all were like, well, they did a lot with CGI for the dragons for that first season, and
right,
we expect that it's gonna be a lot of work for what they want to do going forward. So we were understanding, but after seeing some of that, it looks good.
yeah,
Um, I'm really, really excited for it. I can't wait to have it back. Like I can't wait for the writers in general to get back to writing so we can maybe get a new show or new series in addition to something like that. Like TV is slow right now.
yeah,
Aside from like the reality shows and stuff, TV has been slow lately. So this is gonna be a good get back. I hate that I kind of don't like that it's summer. And if I'm HBO, I would be questioning like that's a tough time. If you're gonna like either you should have came out early and maybe did, that half season pause type shit that people be doing, or just go, rip the bandage and say, yo, we're gonna wait till fall when people are in the house on Sunday nights. Because summertime, people not in the house.
yeah. But I think, but like you were saying, originally it was supposed to be like January, maybe March, something like that. But I think the reason they don't want to go fall is that now it comes on Sunday night, 9 o'clock. And Sunday night, 9 o'clock, because HBO's like that's their premium slot.
Premiere, yeah.
Whatever the biggest show on the network is that slot. And I
Yep.
think that maybe they don't want to compete with Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I'm excited for it though. I am absolutely excited for it. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, same man, same.
Anything else we need to cover? I know there was didn't somebody lose their seat in Congress this week?
Yeah, Representative George Santos, he's the congressman from New York's 3rd district, which is like a Long Island. He got expelled from the House this week. Um, almost all the Democrats, save for a handful, voted to expel him, along with 105 Republicans. The Constitution calls for a 2/3 vote for a member to be expelled from the body, and he now becomes the 6th person in United States history to be expelled from the House of Representatives. And the reason they did so was that one, it was revealed that he lied about his background and saying things like he was Jewish. He's not. And then he says, no, when I told people I was Jewish, I was joking. I was saying I'm Jew-ish, and he said things like his mom died in the Twin Towers on 9/11. Not only did his mom not die on 9/11, she was very much alive. She wasn't even in the United States on 9/11. So people found out he faced some kind of check fraud allegations in Brazil. They actually had a warrant out for his arrest, and they ended up settling the case because he got elected to Congress, so he was able to use his position to kind of make it go away. And then he was indicted on criminal fraud charges, identity theft, campaign finance violations, et cetera, et cetera. The House Ethics Committee did their own investigation and found that he was illegally taking money out of his campaign, using it to do stuff like buy clothes from luxury stores, putting money in his own pocket, paying for Botox for himself, as well as an OnlyFans subscription that he was using his
It
campaign
was a lot of money,
funds for.
wasn't it?
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, with all of that, they expelled him from Congress. And so now, the governor of New York has 10 days from after being notified of the expulsion to announce a special election in the 3rd district of New York to have that seat filled, so the people in that area have representation in Congress.
Well, he was in what state was he in again?
New York,
Oh, shocker.
3rd district,
Okay.
3rd congressional district of the state of New York, which is the Long Island area.
Oh, okay. Well, no super surprise there now that we kind of think about it. So
Yeah.
corrupt up there, yo. It's so corrupt. It's crazy. Wow. All right. Well, anything else we need to cover? You said TJ bowled like shit yesterday. That's not good.
Yeah, it was bad, man. It was bad. Like it
Where
was a six
where was it?
game. It was in Lake Wells at Kegel, that training
Mm.
facility they have out there. They have
Oh
it
yeah,
there.
yeah. That shit's nice.
So yeah, it is very nice. Small, but it's nice. But that's what she said. But
Small, but it gets it done.
but nah, he bowled bad, man. He started off bad. They had to bowl 6 games, and then there was a cutoff. And after game 3, or even after game 4, he was only like 50 pins outside the cut. So if he just
Right.
had him, 2 good games to end it, he could have made it. And he bowled terrible in game 5. Like he
Yeah.
barely bowled he was like barely scratching bowling 100. And then he ended up striking in the 9th, and then struck again to start the 10th, and then threw some bullshit for the last 2 balls of the 10th. It ended up with like a 138. So it was bad, man. It was bad. So, and then I think by the time he got to game 5, he knew it was over. And it seems like he was just, when it was his turn, he would go throw his ball and he would go back to his homeboy Corey's lane, because Corey was like right on the bubble of making the cut. He actually did make the cut by like 10 pins. So he would just go over and like talk to his boy to make, like, encourage him and stuff like that.
Keep him
I guess he
going.
was like, yeah, like, I'm out, so fuck it.
Was he was it a tough pattern?
Yeah, they did it. This guy Mark, his tournaments are called like the Southwest Florida Classic, and so he has
Oh, okay.
tournaments all throughout the year. This dude, I think he's him and his wife seem like people. I don't know this about them, but they seem like those kind of people who maybe don't have kids on their own, so they do a lot of stuff for like other kids or whatever.
Mhm.
And so he runs tournaments like all over the state of Florida, mostly Southwest stuff, kind of, or Central Florida, kind of Tampa area. He doesn't even live in Florida anymore. Him and his wife moved to Tennessee about a year and a half ago, but he still comes down here to run these tournaments or whatever. And
Nice.
even when he announces his tournaments, he always has sponsors from some of the equipment companies like Storm and Brunswick and all that stuff like that. And whatever the cash prize is supposed to be for the scholarship money, if he didn't get enough in like donations from the sponsors or whatever, and then from like the entry fees, he puts the rest of the money up out of his pocket or whatever, to make sure it always pays out what it's supposed to pay out. And so he really like takes care of those kids or whatever. And but yeah, he runs a really, really good tournament. I like his tournaments. He's very strict as a tournament director, but
Yeah.
him being strict keeps trains on time. You know what I mean? Like when he makes announcements in the beginning, like if you ever go to one of these kids tournaments, man, they be trying to make announcements. It'd be chaotic. It'd be loud, and then you get to like game 3 and be like, hey, can they do that? I'm like, I'm not sure. For him, he gets on the mic and tells everybody basically, hey, it needs to be quiet here. He essentially tells everybody, shut the fuck up. He makes all the kids sit down. You can't be on your phone. Shut the fuck up while I'm making these announcements. Because if this shit is not the way it's supposed to be, you're gonna be disqualified. No ifs, ands, or buts. You know what I mean?
Not like that high school one. It was like,
yeah,
thank you for
he
coming
be
out.
on
God
it.
bless you. Good night.
Yeah, he be on it, yo. So when you go to this lounge, he be like, all right, can I have everybody's attention? The whole room just falls silent because everybody knows, like, Mark don't play that shit. You literally will be out. So
That's good.
So but yeah, so we like his tournaments though. But he did bad yesterday.
Well,
They even had a kid. They had a kid in the tournament who they're not even from Florida. They fly in from Puerto Rico for his tournaments. And so
oh really?
Yeah. So the guy he runs a pretty good tournament, man.
Probably trying to get that just trying to get that money.
Yeah, trying to get the scholarship money. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think I have anything else. We're about 7 minutes away from kickoff in NFL. So without further ado, I will hand the reins to you to get us up out of here.
Yeah. Hey everybody. We definitely appreciate you guys rocking with us on this week's episode of the Castworthy Podcast. We always appreciate you guys taking that time out of your weekend. Like we always say, man, reach out to your folks. And I'm gonna read something here. I feel like this person said it better than I normally do. And you keep your friends close and remind them how much you care. Never be too busy to call or text, and always make as many memories as possible. tomorrow is not promised to anybody. So reach out to your people, let them know you're thinking about them, and send that text message, make that phone call, etc. Because you never know. Just a quick update on a personal standpoint. I talked about some of the health issues my dad was going through. He had his dialysis port put in, and he started his first dialysis treatment this week. He's had 2 treatments, and he's feeling a lot better since getting treatment. Since the kidneys are essentially filtering your blood, and his isn't being filtered properly. So now he's had a couple of dialysis treatments, and he's feeling a lot better. And then I told you that they found early stage 1 prostate cancer. He'll be going in for surgery. I think it's either this coming week or next week. I don't remember for sure, but he'll be going in for surgery for that. So that was the update there. But with that said, man, like I said, we definitely appreciate you guys for rocking with us each and every weekend. For the folks who listen live, we appreciate you taking time out your Sunday morning. For the folks who listen when the episode posts, we appreciate your time as well. As always, you can find this podcast on all podcasting platforms by searching Castworthy. You can also find us on any social media by searching @Castworthy. On Instagram is @Castworthy_podcast. While you're there, you can leave a like, subscribe, share, follow, tell a friend, help us grow the audience. We very much appreciate it. And with that being said, man, good luck to your teams this week in football. As long as your team's goals don't conflict with mine, I wish you the best. And other than that, man, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a good week in this week to come. And we will see you on the next episode of the Castworthy Podcast. We out. We love you. Peace.